Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick. We have a special short for you today, and a really interesting one, too. We have Brian Woods here joining us, and Brian has a very interesting path in the player development space. He is the founder of the USFL and president of the USFL in its first year of operation in 2022. Some of you will also remember the Spring League from 2017 to 2021. Brian founded and owned that, sold it to Fox Sports. So he's got a very interesting space in player development. And most recently, he's been working with young players, and these are post-college players. He'll tell you more about that in a moment, in terms of their next development steps after oftentimes they've already had an NFL camp that did not result in a roster spot or practice squad spot. So, Brian, first of all, thanks very much for joining us.
Absolutely, Ken. It's really a pleasure to be with you here this afternoon.
All right. So talk a little bit about maybe a gap in player development that you thought you could make into a good business here.
Yeah, look, I think it starts from the high school level all the way up. And I think even the National Football League is struggling right now with the product. And I think part of that is, if you look at, let's just take college football and the FBS Division I level, right now you've got this phenomenon that is the transfer portal, and it's led to a situation where the top players could be changing schools every 9 to 12 months, and what that has led, and that has come absolutely at the the detriment of player development. And so I think for years the NFL has always struggled with quarterback development. Now I think it's become an even bigger problem. If you look at the past draft, the number one quarterback that came off the board was at 3 colleges. Just about every quarterback that was drafted was at a minimum of 2 colleges. And again, this is all coming at the detriment of player development. And so I think what the National Football League is seeing now is not only are players coming to them in camp right out of college, lacking maybe some physical development, but there's also that emotional development aspect as well. And so I think that is affecting football at all levels. And I wanted to get back out there. I have been in this space as it relates to professional football development for some time now. I wanted to get back out there and create a platform that could serve as a place for players to continue to get meaningful repetitions, continue to kind of hone their craft, and most importantly, get current film and be able to use that as a method to warrant further attention from NFL clubs, because not all of these guys are catching on immediately. And so a place where a player can go and continue to kind of develop their skills and continue to compete and remain relevant in the eyes of current NFL evaluators, I think is really important. And we're trying to fill that critical void.
Okay, I want to get onto the player development component of this as it relates to post-college players, but let's go back for a moment to the process of NIL, and this relates to the Ravens directly, and this is a Ravens audience you're talking to. The Ravens were well known for having a fantastic small school scouting ability, and they've got Carson Vincent in this draft, but honestly, they hadn't had a lot of small school picks in the last few years. You go back a few years, they've got Lardarius Webb, Brandon Williams, players like that who came out of smaller schools. And I think that Eric DeCosta, when he was running the scouting area, had a focus that went down another level. It is the NIL money now, it seems like, does not allow for players to finish their college careers very often at a small school. It's much less frequent than we've seen before. What would be your preference if you were an NFL executive in terms of drafting these players? Would you like to draft players who finished their entire career at one school and got as much development as possible, or and I'll let you define that, or would you rather have players that at least participate at the highest level, even if it meant transferring?
I think I would look at programs like Indiana and look at what Curt Cignetti's doing right now, the success he's having, and his kind of philosophy, if you will, for years has been, I'm not going to go and sign the 4- and 5-star player, even though now, just based on their successes, he's probably having a better go at it as it relates to recruiting. But his philosophy has always been, let's go after the players that maybe are not as highly sought after, and let's develop them. And I think not every program is like that. I think Indiana's one. I think Iowa's another. So I would look to, recruit and scout players from those programs. But I would tell you, you raise an interesting point, because the phenomenon that used to be the small college prospect that could catch on with an NFL club, a 1AA receiver, a Division II player, that is almost eliminated at this point. And you're also seeing it. I'm not saying that scouting departments around the National Football League are getting lazy, but let's call it for what it is. There's definitely an interest for them to be more efficient in their scouting efforts, to concentrate their efforts in the areas where they feel like, or the conferences and the schools that they feel like are going to have the very best players. And what that means in this world, in the modern day, it's the SEC, it's the Big Ten. Look at this year's first round draft. Just about every player selected in that first round was either from the SEC or the Big Ten. Let's go back and look at the transfer portal 9 months ago, okay? 66 first team all conference selections from the group of 5 schools went into the transfer portal. And I think the number was 44 of those players ended up on Power 4 rosters in the last 9 months, okay? So there's definitely, the NFL sees what's happening, and I think they're going to start prioritizing these better programs. But I would also caution them in doing so, because I think there are some players that appreciate the opportunity to start at one school and finish at that school. But I could see where there's going to be more of these players that slip through the cracks because we're prioritizing certain conferences and certain schools that before the era of NIL, we didn't see. And so I think that is something that you're going to see more and more of, and you're going to definitely, there's going to be some interesting statistics coming out of this over the next year or so.
Yeah, that is interesting. You're bringing me down to an interesting math question, which is how many total players does the Big Ten and SEC have to have if they truly are the biggest fish in the entire pond? They certainly are the biggest fish. If they swallow every other fish in the pond, let's put it that way. How many players do they need to have coming out per year to effectively refill the entire NFL ranks? And it seems like they'd almost be there right now in terms of, because you have to, players have to last several years in the league on average. So you would think that we've got to be close to 30 teams between those two conferences now.
Yeah, and that number is probably only going to gradually augment, right? And so, or be augmented rather. So I do think that if you look at the number of players between, let's say, 255, somewhere in that ballpark each year, are drafted, somewhere in the 250-ish range is invited to the combine every year, and then there's a number of undrafted rookie free agents. But I will bring this up as well. The number of undrafted rookie free agents that made opening day active rosters this season was the highest number, I think, in the last decade, if not historically. So that says something. They are missing on some players. If they're bringing guys in that weren't at the combine, if they're bringing guys in that were not draft picks, and then those players are subsequently making opening day rosters, we're clearly not seeing some of these other small school players, that we're not maybe prioritizing some of these players that in the past would have been prioritized.
Yeah, you're underscoring the inefficiency in the scouting process by the fact that so many UDFAs made it. Okay, completely agree.
By the way, I should also point out that I think Eric DaCosta has done a phenomenal job as a general manager, as an evaluator. He's been at it for many years, and so he's one of the few that I believe really understands it and gets it. So I'm not necessarily poking holes in the Ravens scouting and player personnel evaluation as maybe some other programs.
Okay, so the Ravens had 3 UDFAs make the roster this year. One of them is already gone. I want to bring him up in relation to another player a little later in the show.
Sure.
But let's talk about the Pro Showcase itself. So talk about the event a little bit and how you manage it.
Yeah, so the Pro Showcase, again, this was going back to my days operating the Spring League from 2017 to 2021. And in that period of time, we had almost 200 players signed to NFL teams. And so we saw the value of it. The NFL saw the value of it. And, after I left the USFL in 2022, I had a non-compete in place with Fox at that time. So I couldn't do anything in the professional football space for a while, let alone the professional football development space. But since we exited that space in 21, there was no operator doing what we used to do. And so I felt like if now more than ever, there needs to be an additional platform out there. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a league that runs from February all the way to the middle of June, because I'll bring up alternative football, something I was very passionate about and involved with. But if you don't have a symbiotic relationship and in such a way where players are free to go to and from your organization to a bigger professional entity like the National Football League, then I think it kind of is contrary to positioning yourself as a developmental league. And I think that's the problem the UFL has right now, right? It's a secondary league, plays in the springtime, but they don't finish their season, and players aren't even eligible to sign with NFL clubs until after the draft is concluded, after OTAs have taken place, after mini camps have been conducted. By that point in time, most NFL teams are at their 90-man limit, if not exceeding their 90-man limit or just a little bit under it. So I think that hurts a player who's looking to get back in a league like the NFL when at that point in time, you're more or less just a camp body, right? So I think having something that is placed strategically. We did our first one right after the trade deadline. We'll do another one here in February, probably one right before the draft. We're trying to be very strategic for when we actually hold these, but essentially what the Pro Showcase is, it's a 4-day NFL-style minicamp where players get professional level instruction. Players are put with, former NFL coaches. They get a chance to continue developing. We're looking for that young player. Probably our wheelhouse and average player for us is somewhere between 24 and 26, but we're looking for that sort of player that wants to continue to develop, wants to continue to get live game repetitions, which, by the way, I'm on a practice squad, and the NFL can continue. If I'm a player on a practice squad and there's 16 guys in that practice squad, 17 now if you want to carry an international player, but augmenting the practice squad still doesn't solve the age-old problem with development. And I'll tell you, why that is. Number one, with the new CBA that was put in place years back, it minimized the amount of contact. And so the two critical positions you're trying to develop, number one, the offensive linemen, they're not hitting anybody, they're not getting contact, they're not developing. And then quarterbacks, put them on a practice squad, sure, but they're not seeing a live pass rush, right? So how you're developing quarterbacks with a practice squad is beyond me. And so this is a format where we have practices that the fourth day, it culminates with a live controlled scrimmage. And it's really a great thing for the players because they get current film, and the NFL clubs really enjoy it. That's why we had five NFL teams actually attending in Miami.
And did you have other teams that were watching online or could watch the video of it?
So what happens is we work with a company called Catapult, and they are the video provider, if you will, the video system that all the NFL clubs use almost exclusively. And so because we work with Catapult, we finished up on Thursday, November 13th. By that following Monday, every NFL club had the film. And we were getting requests even prior to the event of teams that might not be able to make it to Miami. Can we see the film? How are we going to be able to access the film? And so there's been a lot of follow-ups from clubs that are actively watching the film. And so just because an NFL club isn't there in attendance doesn't mean that teams aren't interested, and the film is a big, part of the evaluation process.
Okay, so you mentioned one of the development problems for players is they're not getting film, they're not getting live reps, they're not getting coaching. As I cover camp and as I have to look at players in the preseason, one of the there's multiple levels to that problem. One is limited reps, obviously, is an enormous one, and you hit on that directly. Live fire reps is another big one, and joint practices are a level between regular practice and preseason games that are important. I think that's been a big addition for a lot of teams. Then even preseason reps themselves, while they are snaps played in anger, are not necessarily as meaningful because of the level of competition. And then obviously once you get into the season, these teams are trying to install for their base 22 and their starting players and their critical substitution package players. They're not installing for the guy on the practice squad.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Well, what I would add to that, Ken, is that I talk to agents all the time, being in the area that I'm in, and I hear these stories, and I was speaking to an agent a few months back. He had a player, undrafted rookie free agent. He was a defensive back, went to camp, led the team in pass breakups. They chart everything when you're with an NFL club, obviously. So they're charting 7-on-7. They're carrying on. They're taking the stats for the team periods. He led the team in pass breakups and interceptions all throughout camp. He had 9 snaps during preseason, and they were all special teams. So these are some of the things that happen with some of these young players, especially the undrafted players. They don't get a lot of opportunities. And now that there's fewer preseason games, even fewer than they would before. So
I'm actually shocked at that kind of a relationship. I don't think that would happen with the Ravens because you have the second half of preseason games. They sit out so many players. That's really surprising. I'd like to know.
yeah,
I'd like to know what team was involved in that, but you probably can't tell me.
yeah.
Um,
I'll have to follow up with the agent. Yes.
yeah. Um, so you mentioned to me that about a third of these players that participate in the event have some previous camp experience with an NFL team, at least that.
That's correct. And so typically the average is somewhere around 1 in 3 players has either been in an NFL mini camp, a training camp. In some instances, we have players that are former active roster guys, but they were active recently and they might be a little bit older, but they still have some gas left in the tank. And there's still a player that an NFL team wants to come and see, okay, where are they at this point? And it's better than, okay, we saw them 9 months ago. What have they done the last 9 months? So the Pro Showcase offers that platform for a player to remain relevant and also be able to put together, current reps and current film. But we don't discourage. Obviously, we try to get those sort of players involved, the players with NFL experience. But we also bring in players that we feel like are deserving of the opportunity because, as I mentioned before, the NFL scouting process is not infallible by any means, and they do miss on some players. And we've had instances where guys have come to us in the past, worked with us, and coming out of college didn't have so much a mini camp invite. We were able to get them on an active roster after they developed and after they were seen by an NFL team.
Okay, so that's first of all, it's great information. Now, this brings up the question of how do you find players? Is it a multi-pronged approach that some come to you and they know?
Let me tell you about the online cannabis company that's changing the game, Mood.com. They created an entirely line of functional gummies, 100% federally legal THC blends, discreetly delivered right to your doorstep. And here's the best part. You can get 20% off your first order at Mood.com with the promo code Ravens. Now, I've tried a bunch of their gummies myself. Each one's totally unique. The Sleepy Time gummies knock me out right away. They help me unwind fast, leave me refreshed the next morning. The Epic Euphoria gummies, they're perfect for when your day just isn't going the way you want it to go. What makes Mood special is how they pair the THC with natural herbs and adaptogens. You won't find blends like this at any local shop. They've got gummies designed for focus, relaxation, clarity, even energy, all made from cannabis grown on small, family-owned American farms. No pesticides, no shortcuts, just high-quality weed you can trust. Plus, Mood backs everything with a 100-day satisfaction guarantee. So head on over to Mood.com, check out their amazing selection, and don't forget to use the promo code Ravens at checkout to save 20% off your first order.
About the thing, do you have a blast email you send out? And I think most importantly, does the NFL ever have a list of tryout players that they're considering? And they say, hey, look, Pro Showcase is next week. Go there, get film. It's better than a tryout in some ways coming in for us.
Well, here's what I'll tell you is that we have a good relationship with the National Football League, specifically the football operations department. And so we typically will send a memo to the NFL in advance of an event. We did so for Miami. We'll do so again with the event in LA in February. And then they'll blast all their teams. And so what that does for us is not only do we send emails, communication to prospective free agent players, we also have a database of every certified National Football League Players Association contract advisor. And so we reach out to them, let them know about the event. But the NFL has been very helpful in the sense that when free agent players or agents reach out to certain teams, trying to get a team interested in a player, they will refer that agent or that player to us and say, okay, there's a free agent event coming up. If you want to be seen by us and we want to take this serious, you should go to this because we think it's a good opportunity. And so I think word of mouth has been a big thing with this. And of course, I'm no stranger to the space and people know who I am at this point. So they know when I'm putting something together, the product will be good. It's credible, very professional level, the way we run it. And so it's really, we benefit from those relationships.
Okay, so this is also a paid service, if I understand correctly. So the players pay a fee to participate. Is that ever paid by an NFL team or somebody else?
No, but I think at some point it is certainly, there is a player development fee we charge. At the end of the day, it is a business, and we want to make it sustainable, and we want to be able to keep it out there. And we feel like we're providing a very valuable resource for these players that doesn't currently exist and hasn't existed since the spring league was sold to Fox Sports in 2021. So we would like to get to a point in the near term where NFL teams would refer players to us directly, and maybe at some point in time there's some sort of participation. I know right now one of the big things for them is their international player pathway program. We had one of these international players, and this is what's great about the Pro Showcases. Every year, the NFL brings over a handful of European players or international players rather. They put them at IFG, they train them, and at some point they put together a combine, and they try to get their NFL teams interested to the point where, hey, if you want to carry an international player, it will not count against your allotment of 16 practice squad players. So they can carry a 17th practice squad player if, in fact, that player is part of the international pathway program. And so what's great about the Pro Showcase is they don't see these guys in pads unless they're with us. So they're going to see these guys, in t-shirt and short. They might put them through a combine at some point, and then they say, okay, NFL clubs, come and take a look at these guys. But they really want to see them in a football environment where, even more so, they're going against other talented American-based football players. And so we had an example of that coming out of our Miami event. We had a defensive end we brought over, and just last week was signed by the New York Jets to the practice squad off of the film that player put together in Miami.
Oh, that's a good feather in your cap for a win like that. And I know there have been camps in Nigeria going on and whatnot, and the IPPP, it affects the practice squad number, but it doesn't help you in terms of a 90-man roster. It doesn't give you an extra spot there, and it sure as hell doesn't give you an extra 53-man spot. So it's only a practice squad spot, right?
That is correct. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So. All right. Now I want to talk about a specific player who was at your event because he's near and dear to this show. But we've been kind of chronicling his journey to try and find a spot in the NFL, and that's Jeremy Lucien. Can you tell me a little bit about how he looked at this event?
I would tell you that Jeremy Lucien was probably the standout player there coming out of the Pro Showcase. I mean, we knew coming into the Pro Showcase in Miami that Jeremy was a player. Having gone back and looked at some of his film, we knew he had some practice squad experience. I had an opportunity to have some in-depth conversations with him and his father prior to him coming to Miami. And so very quickly, you got a sense that this young man was really raised the right way. He was a go-getter, very ambitious, and he's talented. And so I thought, man, what we need to be able to do, what the Pro Showcase, our mandate, especially with a player like Jeremy, is to get him back, because Jeremy belongs back in the NFL. There's no question in my mind that Jeremy can play in the NFL. And so if we're not getting him an opportunity, which I believe we will, especially if he doesn't get signed to a futures deal in the coming weeks, I will be very, very surprised. But he just an incredible young man, had a great experience in Miami, played exceptionally well to the point where some NFL clubs, came up to me during practices and commented on his performances from the day before. And so we feel very strongly that Jeremy is deserving of another NFL opportunity, and we're doing what we can, working with the agent, working with the father, and trying to facilitate that.
Okay. Now I focused a lot of my efforts during the preseason on the fringe of the roster. Who's making the roster, anything they do in preseason. First of all, the Ravens don't even play their starters pretty much the entire preseason, but it's the Carson Vincent who that's the only snaps he's going to get this year. It's a player like Jeremy Lucien who gets to play the entire second half of several preseason games because of the need to field a team. The thing that struck me about him, and I think that struck the Ravens because they seem to have a type when it comes to safeties, I'll get into that in 1 second, is that Lucien is extremely brainy and picks up the playbook extremely quickly. Now, I don't know if you guys work with that sort of thing. If you have an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator at these events talk about that a little bit.
We do. And we, like I said, we will bring in coaches that have NFL experience to oversee our camps. And we don't have the same staff for every camp. It's really based on the location. But like, for instance, in Los Angeles in February, we'll have Norm Chow there running the offense. And Norm is still probably one of the most respected quarterback guys in the business. We happen to have Jerry Glanville at our camp in Miami. And cool. Jerry brings in really good assistants. He's obviously an elderly coach these days, but you would never guess it. His energy level is still that of a 30-year-old. And I think he's 82, 83 right now, and he's still consulting. He's still consulting with professional teams in Canada. I think he's done some work for NFL teams recently. I know Toledo had probably one of the best defenses in the country this year, and he was consulting and helping Toledo, with what they're doing. And so great defensive mind. And so we make sure we bring those level of coaches into events like this. But to your point on Jeremy, I picked that up very quickly, very cerebral, to the point where, did he play at Stanford? Did he play at the West Point? Where was he? I can't remember exactly where his
Vanderbilt is where
played
at
Vanderbilt. Which, by the way, Vanderbilt is also a very well-regarded institution in terms of academics. So.
Right. He started his career at UConn, and he got his engineering degree. I believe he finished his engineering degree at Vanderbilt. I might be wrong about this, but this is where I want to get into the similarity, because I want to know what teams might be looking at this across the NFL. Jeremy was a degree holder, not just a majoring in engineering through school, because a lot of people don't finish. But the other guy they had this year was Ruben Lowry, who made the team as an undrafted free agent. Unfortunately, he had to be cut. He did play one complete game against Houston, but the Colts picked him up right away. He's also a mechanical engineering major, same exact degree. He got his from University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, and is known for being part of a rocketry team that is recognized by NASA. And it's the exact same thing. I mean, the Ravens have a type when it comes to finding brainy safeties that I think was probably based on how much they liked Jeremy at the camp in 23. They kept him on the practice squad essentially for the entire year. They cut him, re-signed him, and then they cut him again in about week 13 to 17 kind of thing. Are you seeing a trend towards braininess like that and be able to pick up the playbook being a very significant factor at some positions?
I think so. I think, look, first and foremost, you want to make sure your quarterback can process things and he's able to, lead your offense with effectiveness. But I think from a defensive side of the ball, your safeties particularly really do become almost your quarterbacks in some ways of the defense, not to disregard the importance of the Mike linebacker and so on and so forth. But the safeties really do, I think, have to be, kind of the thinkers out there. And Jeremy is definitely fits that mold. And I think, look, it no different than the day and time when some NFL teams wouldn't take corners that were under 5'11", and because receivers were getting bigger, and other teams were fine to take cornerbacks that were 5'8" and 5'9". So it's no different. Every team has their perspective on certain positions, and it does feel like that maybe Baltimore has a type as it relates to the safety position, but it doesn't take you very long sitting down with Jeremy to pick up on the fact that he's very cerebral. He can process things very quickly, and just a great young man all the way around. All
right. Now, I talked about this a little bit before. I know you don't give evaluations after the event to the individual players, we don't need to get into the reasons for that. But the other thing is there any kind of personal conversation you have with these young men about maybe when it's time to move on to the next station in life, that, hey, this might not work out for you. And you have this background, it'd be a shame to see you, not start your finance career or become a realtor if that's an option, whatever it might be as their next step.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I mean, I think we do a pretty good job of identifying the players that are deserving of being able to come in and participate in the Pro Showcase. We're not looking for somebody who's probably over the age of 30, although we did have a handful of players that were at the 29, 30-year-old age mark for the Miami event. But one of those individuals is one that had been on 2 active rosters in the National Football League, and he still felt like he had some gas left in the tank. And so we wanted to give him that opportunity. But for the most part, we really do a pretty good job in terms of vetting and screening the sort of talent that we're identifying to take part in the Pro Showcase. And generally speaking, it's the sort of wheelhouse that the NFL is looking for. They're really interested, I think, in that player that's, 27 and below, a player that's, not that many years removed from college, and hopefully a player who's been active with an NFL team in recent times as well. I mean, ultimately, once you're released from an NFL team, let's say it's your rookie year, and let's just say you're signed with that team as an undrafted rookie free agent and subsequently released from that team, you lose relevance by the day, by the month. And so it's the Pro Showcase that will continue to provide opportunities for these players to stay relevant, to continue to get repetitions, continue to get current film. And that's something that you can't place a value on.
You mentioned earlier about the timing of the event being such, and it seems like around the trade deadline, maybe even a little bit before then, but would fit extremely well with the way the replacement level attrits in the NFL as the season goes along. Try and find a really healthy and a team that has options at cornerback in December. It's very difficult to do.
It is to find those kind of guys off the street. And like you mentioned, by the trade deadline, not only is it, you're not going to be able to go and sign a player off an active roster from another NFL club at that point, but you've also had the attrition of the natural attrition that takes place by that time. You're talking, we were having the Pro Showcase, I want to say following week 9 or week 10. And by then, a lot of injuries, if not by the 4th or 5th game of the season, you're starting to see a lot of injuries. So now you're having to elevate players from the practice squad in some instances, or go out and get a guy like a Mercedes Lewis, who's been in the NFL for many years and he's older, but they're looking for a guy they can plug and play very quickly. And so when you're elevating those guys from the practice squad, then now you're going to need to replace them. And so I think having a place for NFL teams to come and find a guy who's battle ready and not just go and look at them in a t-shirt and short workout, because that's what they do. They're going to bring guys in throughout the season, t-shirt and short workout, fly them in on a Tuesday, which is typically the players' day off in the NFL, and evaluate them. And some will do it by need. Some will do it. They'll alternate position groups and say, okay, we're going to work out running backs this week. We're going to work out, punters the next week, whatever it may be. And so I think coming to the Pro Showcase, again, they get a chance to evaluate a guy in a real football 11-on-11 context. And that's, invaluable.
Okay. Last question, then I'll have to let you go here is, I assume occasionally at a $1,299 price tag, you might get a complete nut job who treats this as an American Idol audition, that he just wants the fame of going up there and singing like crap or whatever it is, or America's Got Talent. Do you have an easy way to say no to these folks?
We do. I mean, I think we vet the applications that we get online, and generally, again, we have a kind of a certain player that we're looking for age-wise. We obviously can't carry 35 quarterbacks, and so we've only got so many spots available at each camp by position, and most of the time we're looking for players that have had some level of Division I college football experience, or they've recently been in the last 2 to 3 years with an NFL team. We kind of discourage the American Idol types. We're not really fond to provide those opportunities, mainly because we want to make sure that they have played at a high level, or they've been extremely productive. If they played 1AA or played in Group of 5, we want to make sure they had some production. And generally speaking, those guys know how to practice like a pro. They know how to take care of their bodies. And so we had a full scrimmage the final day in Miami. We didn't have one injury stoppage in an 80-play scrimmage. So that goes to the level of player that's coming in that really knows how to take care of their body and knows what they're capable of doing.
All right. Brian, outstanding stuff. Really appreciate this conversation. Tell folks where they can contact you if they'd like to, either about the event or maybe if they have questions about players there.
Yeah, of course. If they want to reach out to me directly, I have no problem providing my email address, which is bw@theproshowcase.com. And they can always reach out to us via social media at the Pro Showcase, Instagram, and TikTok and the like. And then our website is www.theproshowcase.com.
Outstanding. Other folks out there, if you have an idea for a film study short, hit me up. DMs are always open on Twitter. I'm looking to hear from you. Also, make use of hashtag Filmstudy Mailbag if you'd like to have a question answered in maybe 1.5 to 3 minutes that I could do in a short video. Brian, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks again, Ken. I really enjoyed it.
And we'll talk to you later on Film Study.